I just want to welcome everyone to this week of Behind the DAW. My name is Wyatt Troy, and I interview music producers and music industry experts on an emotional, philosophical, and artistic level to get inside their heads, gather the best information, and then bring it back to you. And by the way, this is a companion podcast to our YouTube series In the DAW, where we invite artists to dissect their songs in real time. If you're interested in that, there's a link in the description. If you want to see any artists come on the show, or if you have any feedback, you can contact me at wyatt@behindthedaw.net. I want to welcome everyone to this week of Behind the DAW. We have a very special friend, an old instructor from Icon Collective, one of my favorite teachers there. His name is Michael Wyckoff. How you doing today, man?
Good, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic. He also goes by Riot. He also did music for Pitch Perfect 3, and he has an amazing YouTube channel where he does finger drumming and light shows. He does it. We're going to get into a lot of stuff. You do a lot of stuff. Is there any big points that I've missed about what you do in the music industry?
I think like my main focus is writing music for, like you said, like movies and video games, but and also like the pop music stuff that I do.
That's right.
But I mean, that's basically like the gist.
First off, to get you warmed up, to get you into the deep mindset, I'm going to ask some very deep questions. The first deep question I have for you is clapping just high-fiving yourself because you're not close enough to high-five the performer?
Ooh, yeah, I think clapping is high-fiving yourself. What if it's our sarcastic clap? Are you doing it because you're not close enough to high-five the performer, or are you doing it, out of spite towards the performer? And then is it a lack of high-fiving, or is it just its own category?
There's multiple dimensions of high-fives. I've never even thought about this before, but yeah, you're right.
Because not all claps are genuine, unfortunately.
Not all claps are
like a slow golf clap.
We'll give it a some of the time. Okay, next question. Is it true that everything in the universe is either a potato or not a potato?
Yes.
Is that true?
That would be true. Either it is a state of being a potato, or it is not a state of being potato.
Can you be?
Although words are just what we agree upon them being. So, I mean, if we all decided that a potato was just matter, then everything would be a potato.
What?
Because who's to say that a potato has to be, potatoes aren't vegetables, right? What are they? Legumes, I think? No, I could be making, I don't know. But whatever they are, they're definitely not.
They're carbs.
Yeah, they're carbs. Words are just what we agree upon.
Do you ever think you can be in the middle of being a potato but not being a potato?
Like where you're both?
Yeah. Is that even possible? Can you be part
are
potato?
French fries in that state?
I don't know.
Both potatoes and not potatoes, because where do you stop defining something as its original state of being?
I knew you would take that question down a good rabbit hole. I knew I could trust you. I've been saving that one. And then finally, and now this one kind of broke my mind for at least 15 minutes, and I had to recover from it. But if someone broke 2 world records and they were the first person to break 2 world records, so if they did that, they technically would win 3 world records, because they would break a world record and then they break another world record, and then they'd be the first person to break 2 records, so they break 3 records. But then they'd be the first person to break 3 records. There are 3 world records, which means they'd have 4 records, and then you just won an infinite amount of records.
But is there an award for not obviously there's awards for breaking individual records, but is there is there an award for most broken records? Is that? I'm
assuming that if there's an award for the world record for the longest fingernails, I'm assuming there's got to be an award for the most awards awarded or something.
Like John Williams, other than Walt Disney, John Williams is the most Academy Award nominated person ever. John Williams right now is the most Academy Award nominated person alive. He has 47 or something obscene like that, but they don't give him an award because then I guess it's just a kind of an agreement that's dope, but I don't know. I could be totally wrong. I wasn't aware that we gave people awards
for having
awards. Yeah.
So let's say that one does receive an award for breaking 2 world records. He's the person that has the most world records in the world. Does he then have an infinite amount of awards because he keeps? You see what I'm saying? Do you see how
if that is the system that we abide by, then the first person to achieve that would be undefeatable, because then you would just subsequently have to keep awarding them, and that would instantaneously take them to an infinite amount of awards, and then nobody could ever surpass that, because they would never, even if they broke, let's say he like was the fastest person alive and he could jump the furthest, and somebody surpassed him there, they would still only have 2 awards, and because he had already had the most awards and then got that, past it. It's kind of like in business, be the first or be the best, but in this scenario of awards, just be the first.
Do you feel like you're in a deep mindset now that we've kind of...
Yeah, no, I'm ready to go.
Dude, I really appreciate you coming through and doing this. And so I do have a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. So how have you been for the last year? I haven't seen you for a long time.
I've been good. Just been working on music, trying to make it happen, doing all sorts of stuff like we talked about, working on video game right now, the next Stress Level 01. I'm just doing different pop stuff and my Riot project and just all that, and grinding and making it happen.
Totally, man. So the first question that I have is actually about your Riot thing. I want to get into the other stuff a little bit later, but about your Riot project, why do you feel like people are so into like the finger drumming light show kind of thing? Why is it interesting? Because it is, but why do you think so?
So I think we got to break that into 2 categories, like the finger drumming aspect of it and the light show aspect of it. Mm-hmm. The reason people are into the finger drumming aspect is the same reason I was attracted to it. Like being a piano player my whole life, I love electronic music, but I've just never really liked DJing. I don't want to knock anybody that does like DJing. I've just always found it really boring. But that's just my opinion on it. Like when I saw, like first Pop Culture, by Madian, but then, my friend M4 Sonic's Video Weapon, I was like, whoa, like here's how you take, because I'd seen like the very first finger drumming video I ever saw, and it was probably like the first finger drumming video most people saw, it was like Arab music doing like this Skrillex, like improv thing at like some live show, and like that went viral, or like early Facebook days. But I kind of was like, oh, that's a mashup, at least from the perspective of the video, because the video didn't show the complete picture, so it wasn't like a full song. It was just kind of like this improv little segment, so we didn't get to see the full picture. But then with the full picture with M4's thing, where it was like a full song, I was like, whoa, this is how I really want to perform my electronic music. I don't know, this is just like a philosophy I have about like live music. Like the reason I go see a band that I like, or the reason I go see an orchestra, there are a number of reasons, but I think one of the biggest reasons is that performance will never happen again the way it was done that night. And to me, there's something magical about that, because if I'm just going to hear the song exactly the same, like I'm kind of an introverted person. So if I'm going to hear the song exactly the way it's, quote, performed on the master, then why don't I just like throw a party with 5 to 10 of my like closest friends and just listen to it on really loud speakers in my house? Like, why do I have to go pay $30 and spend, if you drink like, that's another thing that I've never understood, but like, go spend like $10, $15 on alcohol and in front of all these strangers. And for me, that was just always like this thing where I was never kind of into that. For me, it was like, here's this opportunity to perform in a way where I can improvise, it's live, I'm in control, and I can do something that hopefully is magical and will never happen again, and is a moment that, because I think it's like this collective shared moment. I think that's what, like, live music, it's like this, you are feeding off the audience is feeding off you, and you're all in this moment together. But at least the most magical moments of live music in my life were ones where I sat there and I was like, holy crap, like everyone who is not here is missing out, because this couldn't possibly ever happen the same way ever again.
I see.
You know what I mean?
And so that's what the finger drumming aspect, right?
Yeah, and so that's what I think the finger drumming aspect is, that it's live and that you can improvise it, and I think people really resonate with that. The light aspect, I think, is just
pretty.
I don't know. Well, yeah, but I don't know. I mean, we could get like super early evolution, certain types of colors, or
physiological kind of a thing,
fruits and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just I think it's in our nature to enjoy lights, and I've always been a very visual oriented person. Like before wanting to do music when I was a kid, like I wanted to be a film director. So kind of that marriage of audio and visual entertainment to me has always been just something I've been into, and so I think the light aspect, is just because it's cool, and it's another thing to kind of keep you entertained. There's this documentary that Novation is making right now. I can't say too much about it, but it's basically about this culture, and that's kind of like something that me and some other people were talking about, is just the fact that I think people get it confused, is that it's not about the lights, it's about the performance. The lights are just a bonus, as if like there's I forget what keyboard it is. I think it's the Native Instruments has this like,
oh yeah, the complete control.
Yeah, the complete control where the keys light up. Why wouldn't you want a, like if I could get a Steinway that like where the keys lit up, that would be amazing. And if I had the money, I would do it in a heartbeat, because who doesn't want that? There's a reason Amazon sells, toilet seats that or not toilet seats. There's like these things you put in your toilet that light up, and there's a reason people buy, like LED kits for their cars, for the interiors of their cars, because it's cool. And unless you're colorblind like my dad, then you're gonna enjoy that. The culture didn't arise out of the lights. It was first the need to perform in a way that people resonated with.
What happened to the launch pad? Because now you're on the MIDI fighter. What happened to the launch pad?
Oh, I'm definitely not switching away from the Launchpad for good. Basically, DJ Tech Tools reached out to me and they were like, hey, we're doing the MIDI Fighter 64, because they did that because Sean kind of asked them to, Sean Wasabi. So they reached out to me and a couple other like people in like the scene, and we're like, hey, we're doing the MIDI Fighter 64. Do you want us to send you one? They did, and it's really great, and I love it, and the fact that mine is unique. It's like the only one that has orange buttons.
Yeah, that's cool.
It is really cool. My next video is Launchpad, and I'm going back to Launchpad. I just wanted to make a couple videos as like a thank you to them for indulging me in that way.
Dude, totally.
There's a few reasons like I enjoy the Launchpad better. One of the reasons is just the functionality. Like the MIDI Fighter 64 obviously has 64 buttons, but the Launchpad has more than 64 buttons. It has 64 pads, but it also has the side buttons, the top buttons. Like the way I set up my routing is I always use the side buttons as like macro and bank switches. I had to, on the MIDI Fighter songs, I had to use one of it was like 3 or 4 of the 64 buttons that I normally just use for sounds as bank switches. And so, that's less functionality there. Another thing is I'm just so used to square pads.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love like the action of the MIDI fighter. I think the action of the MIDI fighter is much better than the action of any of the launch pads. Similar to how, like a Steinway, the action on a Steinway is better than the action on a really crappy, MIDI controller.
Totally.
So it's been like 6 years now, and I'm just so used to that. Like a big part of playing any instrument is muscle memory. And so in my mind, playing on the corner of the pad is like not only acceptable, it's actually like a technique that I develop in like certain situations to, just do stuff. And when it's a circle, if you play in the corner, you just play in the middle of nothing. And so basically like I find myself missing on the MIDI fighter, where I would never do that on the Launchpad.
Totally.
So obviously you can train yourself to not do that. So for the reason of that, for the reason of the less functionality, I definitely like for shows and stuff and for future videos, I'm going to be sticking to the Launchpad. But I just really appreciate DJ Tech Tools sending me, that one of a kind MIDI fighter in the first place, because they didn't have to do that.
Yeah, that is really, really cool. For those who are listening and who have not experienced the amazing finger drumming videos that Mike puts out, go check them out right now on his Riot channel. But on there and on your videos, you like I think the last one was in China, right? Like up on the mountain in China.
The last one was in the Philippines. But I did do a behind the scenes thing, and to get to the Philippines, we had to go through China.
That's right. You've done it in multiple places. So I guess my question is, what's the most dangerous situation that you've done that in?
The most dangerous situation I've done that in is definitely the next video that I'm putting out.
Ooh.
So basically, I have this video that has been done for 2 years now, and I've been waiting for certain situations in my career to kind of resolve themselves and kind of be in the right situation to put this video out, because I really believe in the song. The video we filmed me and my friend Ryan He helped me out because we went to Hawaii together, specifically the island of Kauai. We filmed in a bunch of different locations, in this cave, on this cliff, all over the place. And the most dangerous one was definitely so this next video I did a little differently. Normally it's just one location for a video, but I wanted to try something new. So this one we actually did 5 locations in one video. And one of the locations is this waterfall in Kauai. And there are literally signs that say, because basically you can't get down to the base of the waterfall because it's a cliff. And there are signs that say like, don't do this, like people die, just danger.
Yeah.
So we ignored them and we decided to like rappel down to the base of the waterfall with ropes with a backpack full of launch pad gear. Basically got to the base of this waterfall, and it's the coolest shot that I've ever done ever. In my opinion, like maybe minus like there's a few like really cool, but I just like love the shot because it's like the amount of effort, like the Philippines one, like the amount of effort that went to that was insane too, because it's like you got to go to China and then you got to go to the Philippines, then you got to take another airplane to this other island in the Philippines, and then you got to take like a 6-hour bus ride to get to this remote location, and then you got to like rent a boat to and then have these guys like, so it's just like so much like effort. But this one was effort in a dangerous way, and I wasn't going to do it. The reason I wasn't going to do it is because we filmed that the day of our flight back to LA, and the flight back was at 6 p.m. I just was afraid that we would like get stuck down there. Like I wasn't afraid we were going to die. Yeah. Like I was just afraid that, we would get stuck and we would miss our flight. So that was my fear. My friend convinced me like, no, we can definitely make it. And you're going to get back to, if you don't do it, you're going to get back to LA and you're just going to sit there with regret. And that's just something that I'm not okay with.
Yeah.
is like regret, like, oh, what if we did it and I don't regret it? Had we died, I would have regretted it. But so that's definitely the most dangerous one.
You keep talking about you love the marriage of visuals and audio. It's amazing what you're doing with that. I mean, you wrote music for Pitch Perfect 3. How was that, by the way?
It was good. It's because I wrote I worked on a couple of the tracks, Freedom, Toxic, and this other one, because I also, in the movie there's this scene where Anna Kendrick does the does this like launchpad segment. It's interesting because I'm like credited 2 different ways.
Interesting.
In the soundtrack, I'm credited as Michael Wyckoff as a musician. In the actual movie, I'm credited as Mike Riot as an Ableton consultant. Somebody goofed, but I guess they didn't know how to like consolidate like my 2 completely different jobs in that. But it was cool. The working on the music thing was just like anything else. It was very different than like some of the actual like full movies I've scored by myself, because like that's like, you have like 2 weeks to do an hour and a half of music. Whereas this was kind of just like, okay, yeah, you're only doing like 3 songs. So not that it's like a take your time type thing, but it's not like I'm a fraud. How do I get this done? I feel like, I've talked to a lot of people about that, and I've like looked at a lot of interviews, and I feel like that feeling of like, how on earth am I supposed to do, like when you're doing a whole movie, like how on earth am I supposed to do this? But what I thought was cool, but I was like a little naive in this, was I thought like, I knew I was working on the music. They called for the Launchpad segment. They called me and they were like, hey, we need you to program a Launchpad performance of this song. And I was like, oh, cool. It was I totally don't remember what it's called, but I remember what it sounded like. Like Anna Kendrick starts out like beatboxing, and then it has like these like these weird like it turns into the Freedom finale, but it's like this early version of that in the movie. But basically they called me and like, hey, we need you to do this. And I was like, okay, cool, when? And they're like, 5 a.m. tomorrow. I'm like, but it's I didn't say this, but in my head I'm like, but it's 7 p.m. now, and normally it takes me like a couple days to do this. It was just freaking out. I got it done, but only because if anyone out there is familiar with the finger drumming community, like Nev helped me out a ton in terms of basically like I programmed like all the sound. Like I was like, yo, like, cause it's literally impossible. Like nobody could have literally, what they asked is literally impossible to do from scratch. So basically in the amount of time. So Nev sent me a bunch of his lighting presets. So basically I didn't have to code the light element. Like I still had to program it, but I didn't have to like make the patterns from scratch, which
Yeah.
would have made the task impossible. The deadline was 6. I got it to them at 5:30, and then I went to sleep, and then they called me at 7 asking me how to set up Ableton. So that was a ton of fun. But jokes aside, though, like I don't blame them like for not knowing. It wasn't that they didn't know how to set up Ableton. It was that they didn't know how to set up to get the lights to work. Nev and our friend Luke coded this Max for Live plugin that's like only he and I have, and it just makes programming the light portion. The sound portion is still like tedious, but the light portion, which used to take days and days and days and days and days, now you can get done in a few hours.
Oh,
Not
so
a few
good.
hours, like, you know, a day. So I don't blame them for not knowing how to do that, because it's like literally 2 people in the world have this program, and it's not intuitive at all. So I'm not blaming them by any means. It was just, I was just kind of like, oh great, I got an hour and a half of sleep, and I got to do this, and then I got to go, you know, go to Icon. So that was a tough day.
Which brings me to you getting a freaking platinum record. What?
So yeah, I've been doing a lot of like pop stuff lately, and a lot of K-pop stuff lately, specifically with like SM Entertainment. I'm extremely grateful for that, just because it's like I'm not a pop star, you know what I mean? I don't like sing. Like in 2018, getting a platinum record in America, you really have to be at the absolute peak.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be a Bruno Mars or a, you know, in the EDM space, like a Chainsmokers or a Zed or something. So in America, you know, unless the Riot Project takes off significantly, and you don't get like platinum records, you know, for film, like that's not a thing. So like if I scored, you know, the next Star Wars or something, like with the like American pop stuff, it's like you really have to be at the pinnacle, just because culturally people don't buy music in America, and the streaming equivalent to get a diamond is 1.5 billion. And platinum is 750 million, because it's like 75 million is gold. What? Because like gold is 500,000 sales, and I forget like how many streams is the equivalent of one sale, but normally you would have to sell 500,000 to get gold, and streaming 75 million is the equivalent of that. So if you just, somebody out there do the math on that. But
whoa, what? Really? I didn't realize that.
But the thing is, like in Korea, people still buy music, which is great. Like
so
the platinum records for I wrote, or I should say I produced with a bunch of other people. Like that's why it was like a team thing. Like me, you know, Harvey Mason Jr., Dwayne Whitmore, JQ Smith, like Britt. Like I did the track, but like, you know, like without the vocal. So it's always a team thing, and basically. It was on this EXO album called The War, and it sold 800,000 copies in pre-sale. Culturally, there's something very, very different about Korea, and I really am grateful for that the mindset still exists somewhere in the world, you know?
Yeah, exactly. What? I'm still kind of mind blown about like the equivalent of like buying an album versus streaming. Like,
yeah, no, it's like 500,000 is gold, a million is platinum, and then 10 is diamond.
And that's selling records.
That's selling records, yeah. And then streaming, it's 75 million, 750 million, and 1.5 billion. And to put things in like perspective, like if we're talking about like selling diamond in America, like not streaming, because obviously like now, and albums are different than singles. Like I could be wrong, but I think the last album that went diamond in America, if we're just talking about sales, was like Adele's 21, which was what, like 6 years ago or something?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
So it's been like obviously cultural norms have changed, and you know, the way people consume music has changed. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But like here's what I think is wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with streaming. It's just the fact that the model is not the same, because it's the major labels have made deals with Spotify, you know, to basically lower the royalty rate, because basically like I'm sure like a bunch of people listening are aware of this. The major labels made a deal with Spotify that basically said that like, okay, you don't have to pay us as much in like licensing fees as long as we can get equity in Spotify. So basically, like, you know, Universal, Sony, and Warner were basically like, yeah, I know you can give us our artists less as long as we like own a piece of Spotify, like in equity. And so like, you know, they kind of made that deal and at the detriment of the artist. And so it's a different, you know, obviously you can still make a lot of money with streaming, but the sell, like the physical sales equivalent, it's no contest. It's still no contest. And unless the model changes, given the, you know, the current deal that the majors and Spotify have made, it won't be. You know, now obviously there, you know, you open yourself up to a global audience, but again, the rates aren't comparable with what they would be with physical sales.
I guess like the real tragedy with this is that they could be comparable, but the record labels kind of swooped in and freaking record labels, man.
I think there's pros and cons to major labels, but they definitely are a business and aren't always in their interests aren't always aligned with art. Yeah. And you can't blame them. It's a business.
It is a business. But you're right. Because I'm looking at it through the eyes of an artist right now, and I'm like, that's so messed up. But you know, if you look at it through the eyes of a businessman, it's like,
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would have asked for more, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're looking at it from the perspective of art, it's terrible. From the perspective of business, like, yeah, that was a good move. It just sucks when it is art that we're dealing with. You know, it's like if the equivalent was like metal or something, like, you know, the manufacturing of metal, then like nobody, I was going to say like, you know, farm animals, but then, you know, we different opinions, but like, you know, like the manufacturing of metal, and it's an abundant metal, and you know the manufacturing of that metal doesn't impact, you know, a community or the earth or anything, then yeah, no, like make more money, like nobody cares. But when other people's lives are affected by this, you know, it's a little different. But again, you can't blame them.
So kind of stepping back, looking at the overall picture, you making music, you doing, you know, movies and so on and so forth, I kind of feel like you have a very special perspective on what's going on in the music industry. And I'm sure you've seen this a lot at Icon, as well as talking to people outside of Icon and stuff like that. When you're kind of within
a bubble.
Yeah, when you're in a bubble, it's really hard to see what's going on inside that bubble. So you, like, I have this image in my mind of you, like you perched up on a wall and you can see all the bubbles and you can kind of see what's going on inside of each bubble. And so you have like really good perspective to know how to. Like,
I try to. Hopefully, you know, hopefully my perspective's aligned with reality. Yeah. But, you know, but you never can know, you know, like no one can predict the future.
Yeah, exactly. So what are you seeing inside? Let's focus on the EDM bubble. You know, like you looking inside of there and you kind of having that perspective. And what are some of the things that you see? It's like, man, I see a lot of people struggling with these things inside this bubble. And
right,
you know what I mean?
Well, I think EDM is never going to go away. Mm-hmm. Right, people like to dance, people like to have a good time. But I think, and I don't want to like hurt anybody's feelings. I think like if you look at like the boom of EDM in, you know, like 2011, I think a big portion of that, like obviously was due to Skrillex and people like him who, you know, were presenting these sounds that the world had never heard before. The thing about that is the novelty wears off. And I'm not saying that sound design is not amazing, because it is. You know, a piano is technological sound design. You know what I mean? It's like before we had the piano, we had the clavichord and the harpsichord, and the clavichord and the harpsichord don't sound anything alike. And before somebody invented the saxophone, you couldn't get musically, you couldn't produce that like sonic palette. So I'm not saying that sound design is not awesome. It's just, I think a lot of people forget that the musical aspect, the melody, the harmony, the lyrics, the songwriting, there's something. And we can get like philosophical on it, you know, but like storytelling and conflict resolution and all that. But like there's something about that that's like built into human nature that is never going away. And so even though like the novelty of certain types of sounds, as well, basically what I'm saying is like if you are relying solely on novelty of sounds in spite of a lack of musicality in terms of songwriting or composition, then I think you're going to be left behind. And I could be wrong. You know, maybe there's this new technique that comes out where people are like, whoa, I've never heard this before. But at least from my perspective now, like I'll listen to, you know, drum and bass, and I love drum and bass, but like it's, you know, it'll be like a neurofunk thing, and the reese will be like slightly different. And it's like, yeah, it's slightly different, but it's not like so novel that it was like when I first heard Cohen Sound or something where I was like, what the heck is going on? You know what I mean? Totally. So, but that being said, like Cohen Sound, I think is still amazing because, you know, their stuff is still very, very musical. They're complete songs. And I don't want to like name anybody else who I think is the opposite of that, but I think there are other people in bass music where they're not interesting as a song.
Yeah.
And the sound design is cool, but it's not sound design that I haven't heard before, if not slightly different. So I'm not saying like just go abandon what you like, but I think it's important to think back to the music that you liked when you were a kid. And obviously some of the people that are like listening to this, you know, are like younger than I am. So maybe like when they were 6, like they grew up on rhythm, you know. that's like I'd love to like study the psyche of that kid when they get older. But basically, like for me, it wasn't that, you know. For me, it was like Queen and Billy Joel and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Beatles and you know, just I mean, it was all over the place.
Sure.
But the point is, like, songs will never go to fashion. So I think if you can, and I love sound design, then present it in a way where the musical portion of that is timeless. You can listen to it 10 years later and it's still a great song, and it hasn't, obviously everything will age a little bit, but yeah. I would still listen to stuff from the, you know, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, that is still good because it's still a good song. I don't care if I listen to a song from the 50s and I'm like, why is, you know, the lead guitar panned all the way to the right? You know, like that doesn't bother me. You know, and I made this like realization like for a couple of reasons. One, like with the Riot project, I was like, you know, I kind of had this mindset like everything has to be a banger. And, you know, I would make a banger and then like a couple years later, I would be like, oh, this is kind of dated, you know, and it depends on the song. Cause like if it was still like a good song, then it would still be cool. But like when, for example, like Woo Boost, like you go back and you listen to Woo Boost, it sounds super dated. And in 2000 and I don't know, was that 9, 10, whatever, that came out, that was like a banger, but like as a song, and I'm not knocking Rusko, you know, it's just, there's a lot of people that I could say the same thing for.
Yeah.
I don't think as a song it holds up. You know, it's kind of like this nostalgic, like, oh, remember that, but it's like you don't, you know, I don't know, that's just my opinion. But another reason I think is because I think, you know, writing songs is important is because I think a big part of music, one of the reasons I think people like music is because it helps them relate what they're going through in life. And when something dance music, because again, like people like to dance, people like to party, that's never going away. I don't think it should go away. I think, you know, part of life is to have a good time. If you're an artist, and so I'm speaking to the artists right now, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to agree with me on this when I say that when you only make one type of music and it's the same type of energy, that's not how life is. You know what I mean? Life isn't always this high energy state of being where everything's like, you know, just a party. You know, we need songs that are sad. We need songs that are about love. We need songs that are about death. We need songs that are about being friends. We need, you know, like different types of songs. And so obviously you can say, okay, well, there are other people that are going to make those songs. And I think that's right. Yeah. There are totally other people that are going to make those songs. But why not do it why not present it in a package that is part of who you are as a person? Like if you love dance music, why not present that package of a song that's about love or death or whatever in, you know, in a way where it's still dance music, but at the same time it's a song, and it's not just, because basically like what I see a lot of is I'll like go through SoundCloud and it's basically like, let's get to the drop. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the rest of the song, and I mean that in the nicest way. I'm not like knocking there because you can tell it's literally like filler to get to the drop, and then the drop is super cool, and then there's more filler, and then it's the next drop, and then we're done. And, you know, there's a reason SoundCloud, I forget what year it was, as an April Fool's joke, a button that was like, here, if you want to skip to it, you know, you could like click a button and skip to the drop, because basically like SoundCloud looked at like where the first initial loud moment of like peak RMS was, and they were like, oh, that must be the drop. Hit this button, we'll just skip to the drop for you, because we know that's what you're going to do anyway. Because we looked at our algorithms and we saw that that's what everyone in dance music was doing anyway. Because again, all the songs were like filler up until the drop. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is like, don't let any section of your song be filler. And I'm guilty of this, you know, in my dance music project. I'm very guilty of this on certain songs. And, you know, I think those were decisions I made based out of fear. And, you know, you can't make decisions out of fear. So I don't know, nobody listening to this has to agree with me on that, but that's just my perspective on that. So I think like if I was perched and looking at the dance music world, I think if you want to succeed in dance music in 2018, then you have to be making songs that not only can do what, because like you don't have to be a dance music artist, but if you are, I think they have to be songs that work well in a live EDC Coachella setting, but also songs that people are going to want to listen to in the car and not just going to skip to the drop.
Totally.
Basically, because if your song is a skip to the drop song, the only setting that it's gonna make sense in is a live setting, because then people are just gonna double drop it and they're gonna go from somebody else's intro, which is really good and actually a good song, to your drop, which is really good. But nobody's gonna want to listen to that while they're doing their homework or driving with their friends to wherever.
But you can see yourself perched too? Like you can picture that?
I mean, no, because I feel like that would be like super arrogant if I thought that like I know everything. I definitely don't, and
No,
I
get
definitely
it.
well, let me put it this way: if I knew everything, then I would be headlining EDC, and I'm not. I definitely don't know everything, but I think being around like certain people in the industry and doing a bunch of different things and not being, I guess like it's not that I'm perched. It's just that, like you said, because I'm not so in only the bubble of dance music, and I can see a bigger picture. I don't see the whole picture, obviously, but I see a bigger picture. And like not all my friends make dubstep, or not all my friends make future bass or whatever. Because I feel like you are, and this is obvious, and this has been said a million times by a million different people, but I really believe that you are who you surround yourself with. And so if you surround yourself with people who think that they don't care about the song and it's all about the sound design and skip to the drop, then that's what you're gonna do in your own music. One point that I didn't touch on is it also depends on where you want to be, and that that is only a decision that you can make. You have to define success for you. And so if success for you is just playing a few shows a year and building a social media presence and that's it, there's literally nothing wrong with that. And it's not that hard to do that. But if you want to, I guess, if you want to stand the test of time and be at that top tier, then you really have to make songs that are not just a flash in the pan, the current trend. And then obviously you're like the certain elements of the song are always going to be the current trend. Like I'm not saying if you go back and listen to, I don't know, Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, that certain elements of that aren't going to be dated, but at the end of the day, that's a good song. Certain production elements of like, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, that's a really good song. And, certain elements of that are going to sound dated in terms of production. So, I'm not saying like in 2016, if you made future bass, that was a good idea, but like, look at like, Never Be Like You, that's a good song. You know what I mean? Like if you produce that with just piano and vocals, it would still be a good song. I think you want to use sound design as a tool, unless of course you can always just make bangers. Like there's nothing wrong with making bangers, but I don't think every song should be a banger. I think you want to make songs that at the end of the day you can put it with a vocal and a guitar or a vocal and a piano and it would still be good and people would still want to listen to it. And not everything has to have a vocal too, but you get what my point. Like the underlying composition, like for example, like Haywire's second album, like there's a bunch of songs on that don't have vocals, but the underlying, I think there's one that's like, I forget what it has, like this really cool like vocal chop thing, and then in the second drop it like modulates like a whole step or a half step or something. But if you took that and you played it on a piano or a guitar, it's still interesting. So
I see.
I guess don't let sound design let sound design augment your songwriting and your composition. Don't let it be the crutch,
the replacement of it.
Yeah. Again, like unless the song is supposed to be a banger and the whole purpose, because there's not like every song has a purpose, and so if the purpose of the song is to be a banger, then dope. But I just see a lot of artists where every song, and I'm guilty, like every song has to be just like banger, and it's kind of like this skip to the drop thing. So if you're gonna do that, then at the very least don't have it be skip to the drop.
Mr. Mike, what has been the deepest thought that you've had in the last year?
I don't know if I could say it's the deepest, but it's definitely helped me. Mm-hmm. And it's a little dark, but hopefully this can help somebody. But basically, a lot of people, like, I think, are afraid of death, and I think a lot of people hope that music can bring them like this, not immortality, but just like this along, because it's like the saying is like, you live as long as people that remember you. And so even if all of Michael Jackson's relatives die, if we still remember his music, then he still lives on in that way. But you have to come to a realization that no one's music is going to stand the test of time over a long enough period. In 300 years, no one will remember the Beatles or Skrillex or Michael Jackson, and I would put money on that. And so then you kind of are like, well, why does it matter? And I think it does matter because then you have to take that away from this kind of after I'm gone thing and more of in this moment that I'm here thing. Because it's like, if you take it away from you, right? It's not about you. It's not about you living longer than through memories and through your music. Then it's about other people. As long as I impact other people, but those people are going to die too. So it doesn't matter. And I think it does because, again, it goes back to what I was saying. All that matters is right now. And I think if you can, even if you're going to die and no one's going to remember you or your music, and the people who liked your music when you were around are going to die and they're not going to remember you or your music because they're dead, all that matters is you made their life better right here and right now while they were with us. And I think that's all you can do. And I think that's all you can expect. And I think that if you go in with that, because again, I was talking about like fear-based decisions musically, and I'm very guilty of that because it's like money and wanting like a certain level of success and providing for a family and all that stuff. But I think if you like go away from that and then you just realize all you have with your music is this current moment to change somebody's life as they are living it right now, and that's the only thing. And obviously you want it to help you out as well. Like I really strongly feel that everybody should play an instrument. I feel like if everybody played an instrument, there would be less issues with mankind, because I feel like a lot of issues are could be like I'm not naive, but like a lot of issues could be helped if more people saw therapists, for example. For me, piano helps in that way a lot.
I see.
Like what I mean is like obviously your music, is cathartic. It helps you deal with the stress of life. And so obviously your music is going to help you in that way too, but it's also going to help other people. And I guess that's what I was getting at earlier with like the music, having like different types of music belong to different moments in life. Like you remember when you're like a dumb kid in middle school and something stupid like really upset you, and then you would listen to like this really sad like Green Day song, and and that would like get you through that, or you were like having a really good day and then you were just listening to like Saturday in the Park by Chicago, just like walking along, having a good day. So like music really has that power to augment or to kind of be a catharsis for like augment positive emotion and be a catharsis for negative emotion. I think you have to take it away from the fear of mortality and just take it to an in the moment. And that's another thing I think is important is the journey. And that's back to the in the moment thing is like, like with the platinum record, for example, like I did this to myself where like when I got it, I wasn't insanely happy. Because I thought that it would be this big moment, like a lot of the stuff, like doing my first, feature film by myself, scoring my first video games. When I like look back on like all the milestones that I've had so far, because I was anticipating this big emotional payoff and I didn't receive it, it was kind of like, well, then that's not it. There must be something more. But then you realize, no, like if I look back when I was making the song that got me the record, or when I was making the songs, or when I was, hanging out with the people and we were collaborating on this, that was a good time. I had so much fun there. So you really have to, I think, enjoy the journey. And going back to what I was saying about music for other people, and realize that your music is going to help them on their journey. And I think unless you're playing shows or you're getting emails from fans or meeting fans somehow, like it's not apparent to you that your music is doing that. You know what I mean? Because it's like you make this music in a bubble. And given the current age of the internet, like you put it out, and then depending on the situation, like that could be it. And you don't see that one time where somebody, just broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend and they were listening to your song and it really made a difference. Or that time when somebody's mom or dad died and that made a difference. Or that time when somebody like got into college and they like jammed your song all the way home. You know what I mean? You don't see any of the pros or any of the positives or any of the negatives. as they relate to your music, but they definitely exist. And so you just kind of have to realize that, like, if you're not meeting the fans or you're not playing shows yet, or you're not, people aren't sending you emails like, wow, you have to realize that is a thing.
Totally.
And it's happening, and you are making that impact. And I think there's something powerful in that. Cause it's like when you, if you're a doctor, right? Like, you just saved that guy's life.
Yeah.
He was going to die.
Yeah.
He just got hit by a car and you just operated on him and he's alive. Obviously being a doctor is very difficult, but I just mean there is that instant knowing of I changed somebody's life. And I think that's like part of like there's a lot of studies that are being done on like, what do millennials want out of life? And one thing that they want is to feel like they're making a difference. Like for example, like teaching at Icon, like I had somebody after a final this quarter come up to me and be like, Mike, you were like the best teacher I ever had. And I thought he meant like music, but he meant like any kind of teacher. And that felt really good. I think there's something about helping other people or just making an impact on people that I think most people strive for. And that's the root of, making a difference and meaning in work. And like, that's where that kind of comes from. Yeah. You have to realize that that's what your music is doing. Bottom line.
I've never put 1 and 2 together here before, but I think you're right. It's like, not only just in the music industry or in EDM, but like kind of in humanity in general, is that you're right. We, at this current state, we can't achieve immortality, but we kind of have this idea that we can kind of.
Would we want to, though? We could get into that conversation.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. But up to like right now, you can kind of create a pseudo immortality.
But then it doesn't even matter. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm getting at, is that like most people want that, but it's like I get that you want that, but I don't think you understand like the uselessness of that.
It's
like,
completely useless.
Yeah, the unfulfillingness of that. You know what I mean? Because like you are already immortalized in a lot of different ways by influence. What you have done to this world, it doesn't matter who you are, how long you've been in the world, or what you've done inside of the world. You have caused so much influence that influence will radiate out until the end of the earth. My 16th great grandpa had no idea that, however many years later, Wyatt Christensen was going to be here on a laptop talking to Mike Wyckoff, who probably is the same 16th grandson of said great grandfather. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way that that he could have known that his influence was going to radiate clear down into here. And it's the same with us, like in some fashion, we're already immortalized, but just people remembering you, like it's useless. It's not going to make you happy. You know what I mean? Like, a bunch of people already know who you are, and are you happy now? I'm sure you're happy, but you know what I mean.
Right. No, yeah. Again, this is like super philosophical, but again, what's going to make you happy is the journey and making other people happy. Whether those other people are your family, whether those other people are complete strangers, you are not going to find like happiness in selfish action, because it's like the saying that like money can't buy happiness, and I think, in a way that's wrong and in a way that's right. Mm-hmm. Like, I know, I'm not going to name anybody, but I know a certain artist who turned down $70,000 to, like, they were going to give her $70,000 to wear this company's clothing at this performance. And she turned it down because she thought it was a bad look for her brand. And there's like all that kind of nonsense. But it's like, well, you know what would have been a better look for your brand? You looking bad with those clothes, and then you donating $70,000 to, like, kids in a third world country. Uh-huh. So from that perspective, money can definitely buy happiness. Because it's like there's the studies that, like, once you meet that certain threshold, like I think in America it's like what, like 80,000 a year or something like that. It's not going to like augment your happiness any further because like there's Maslow's pyramid, right? And it's like certain basic needs have to be met. So if you're making $10,000 a year. Yeah, no, money is going to buy happiness because your basic human needs are not being met. Totally. But once you're past that threshold, then if you're still unhappy, then something else is the cause of that. Part of what can, help with that is, providing value to other people and back to the, like, what do we want in our jobs?
Yeah. Honestly though, would you want to live forever? Like, would you want to be immortal?
I would want to live longer. I would definitely want to live longer, but this like goes into like but what is longer, like, but I definitely would not want to live forever. And I was watching this, I think it was CG Beat Gray. I was watching this YouTube video that he did,
because he's like all about like being immortal. He's like all about, I want to live forever.
I know, and like I normally agree with everything he says. I think he's a brilliant guy. Mm-hmm. And he did this video about like immortality, and he's like, the only reason you don't want to be immortal is because that's like
that's kind of been indoctrinated.
That's not possible
mind,
for you, so you don't even want to entertain the idea. And he expands upon that thesis further. But I was sitting there, I was like, I don't agree with you at all.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't like with music, like I talk about this a lot at Icon. For those of you guys who aren't aware, I teach like music theory and composition and keys at Icon Collective. And basically one of the things I talk about, and music theory has always been my shtick. Like I've always loved music theory, but like one of the first things I say is it's complete nonsense. It doesn't exist. I clarify by saying, I'm not saying you shouldn't learn it and that it won't change your life, because I use it in my music all the time, but you have to realize that a C major 7th chord is not a thing. A C major 7th chord is the name we have assigned to 4 specific pitches. And so one thing I talk about all the time is all that matters is conflict and resolution, consonants resolving into dissonance, going back into consonants. That's why we like stories. If you saw a story and the whole story was somebody at an airport watching paint dry, a movie, I should say, and that was the movie, nobody would watch that. We need conflict of some sort, and the conflict doesn't have to be this like insane villain, but like conflict can be anything from, if we're watching a documentary, there's always like conflict, it's like it's a documentary about Big Pharma or a documentary about whatever, or if it's a documentary about somebody overcoming something, the conflict is still the things they overcome. So musically, that's like we really like conflict and resolution. If we were really getting into it, I'll show you like examples where it's like basically once you start doing certain things in a jazz context and more of a modern classical composition context, common practice like 1800 to like 1600 to like 1900 music theory and tonality breaks down and doesn't make any sense given what you're doing. And so when physics breaks down, so to speak, music theory of the physics of music, like it's not really, but like breaks down, then we have to ask ourselves, well, then what is fundamentally true? And all that is fundamentally true in music is, in my opinion, is conflict resolution. And so I kind of, in life, I kind of look at all of life like that, as like this binary, like duality kind of conflict resolution thing. And I feel like you ask a lot of people like why do you want to be successful? Or why do you want this? Or why do you want that? Part of it, I think, has to do with the fact that you want it before your time has come and you pass away. And if you never have to face that, there's zero urgency. Yeah. And I think if there's zero urgency, then not only will there be zero urgency, but there also will be zero meaning, right? Because it's like if you live forever, why do anything other than just survive? Then there's no reason to do anything other than survive. If you're going to live forever, then all you need, and a lot of people actually, that's their lifestyle, and that's actually, I think, a very healthy lifestyle. I don't know. I'm very much like about either going like all in or like in one way or the other. Like either I think you should be, and this is just my perspective, like on life. I think you should either be very ambitious and try and change things for you and your family and for other people, and just the common good, or I think you should like enjoy life to the fullest and without it being at the expense of others.
I do want to note that like we, at least from my personal definition of immortality in this context, is like you living here in this world, this reality that we're talking about right now forever. If we're talking about, like for those religious individuals that are listening, like the concept of heaven where you are immortal and you don't die, if we're talking about that, like that, in some regards, at least in some religions, it sounds pretty nice. It sounds like a pretty enjoyable thing to be immortal in those kind of situations. But we're talking about here. If you never died, no, religion completely aside, just in this reality. Like go back to like the really cool things in my life. Like for example, when I was in Korea, like working on that song, whenever we go there, we're treated like royalty. It's insane, like 5-star, restaurants and hotels and everything's free and all that stuff, and it's really great. And that becomes the norm, and then that's not good enough. You know what I mean? And then you come back to reality, and you're like, there's like that dissonance, where you realize, no, that was great, or like I was listening to this interview, this guy who's like this businessman who's like a millionaire. He made like his first few million at like 27, and then he's like, yeah, okay, I can retire now. And then he just like went to a beach, and then he just did that for 2 months. Like he just laid on a beach and he was miserable. The normalization of your current experience, even if that experience isn't normal, you know what I mean? It's like on my YouTube channel, like when I was first starting out, like, when I uploaded a video and I got 1,000 views in the first month,
I was like, that's so many people. And that's a healthy perspective to have, you know. And then I remember the first time I got 30,000 views in a day, and I was like, that's so many people. And then that became the norm. And then if I didn't get 30,000 views in a day, and now I don't get anywhere near that close just because I haven't been as active in YouTube algorithms and all that. But, you know, that becomes the norm. And then when that's the norm, anything lower than that is, you know, unacceptable. And in certain situations, I feel like that's a healthy perspective to have. And in other situations, I feel like it's an unhealthy perspective to have. And you really got to step back and look at reality and like deconstruct, you know, your current perspective. To exist in this reality forever would be, you wouldn't be happy. And I think, I don't know. So we can, I would love, like, if anyone who disagrees with me, prove me wrong. I would love to be proved wrong. But that's my current perspective. And like, for example, the CGB Grey video, who had the opposite perspective, he gave me his opinion and I completely disagreed.
That's like what this entire human existence rests on, right? Is just like conflict resolution, having it, not having it, the contrasting, you know, opposites. It's just, that's what makes it so.
That's my opinion. Ooh. Yeah.
I agree. I have no quarrels with that at all. Like that was pretty dang good. You got some good evidence there.
There's always, you know, the ultimate consonance, which is birth, and the ultimate dissonance, which is death, and in the middle is a variation of the two. But it always resolves to zero, if you will.
Mike, thank you so much. Is there any final words that you would like to say to the listeners?
No matter what, don't give up. Don't make decisions out of fear, and also be smart about the way you pursue your career. Like, for example, and again, and this all depends on what your definition of success is. If your objective is a certain level of success in the music industry, then I think you also have to be smart about that. And what I mean by being smart about that is you have to do your due diligence on the networking and the business side of things. And for a lot of us, that's hard and that's not natural and that's not something we want to do. But too bad.
That's life.
If you invent the cure for cancer and you don't tell anybody about it and you just kind of like have it sit there, and then you haven't really helped anybody. So you still have to do your due diligence. You still have to, you know, network with people. You still have to, like, for example, for me, like being, and it depends on what you're trying to do. For me, the video games that I've done, and you know, I got those by being in LA, you know, and I think there's a certain level of luck, but we talk about, like, you know, a lot of people say like luck is opportunity meets preparation. And I completely agree with that. I think I'm very lucky, but I think luck is just opportunity meeting being prepared. And I've had a lot of opportunities that I wasn't prepared for. You know, so the analogy I make is like, you're kind of waiting for somebody to like pitch you a baseball. You know, you miss that baseball and that guy's like, oh, this kid sucks. You know, I'm not going to throw him any more baseballs. And then somebody else walks along and is like, hey kid, need me to throw you a baseball? And then you're like, yeah, give me a shot. And then he throws you the baseball and then you miss. And then you're like, and then he's like, oh, this kid sucks. I'm not going to throw him any more baseballs. And then you just keep doing that. And then eventually somebody throws you a baseball and you hit it. And they're like, oh, okay, this kid knows how to hit a baseball. Let me throw him another. Right. And then you just slowly start to, you know, hit more and more baseballs. So what I mean by that is, like, if you do your due diligence and like, if you want to, for example, be a film composer, like, you have to be in LA. You know, you cannot be in Kentucky. No one in Kentucky, unless for some reason Steven Spielberg, you know, is like, I don't know, but like, so you know, you gotta, like, in EDM it's a little different because it's like a global market, you know, but and the well, I mean, movies are obviously a global market. I should say it's a global, you know, there are events everywhere. You know, movies are only made in LA basically. Like, obviously that's not correct. You know, they're foreign films and stuff, but for America, movies are only made in LA, basically. They're shot in Atlanta and Toronto and all that, but they're made in LA. So you got to be in LA. But, you know, you're gonna be in the room, you know, by just going to events and by, you know, random dumb luck. Like, literally, like half of the Korea stuff I get through my friend John, and I met John by being his piano teacher on accident. I wasn't good enough to work with him at first, but, you know, I was just teaching him piano, and then eventually I got good enough, and then we started working together, you know, and there's been a lot of opportunities. I would meet person XYZ. I, at the time, wasn't good enough, and that opportunity passed me by and it never came back again. And that's okay, you know, so that's going to happen. So, but point being is, you have to not give up and do your due diligence and really work on your craft. Because I think there are two types of people who succeed in the music industry. I think there are people who really get it and really grind and are just amazing, and, you know, in terms of music, and they also, you know, grind and on the networking side of things. And I think there are people who have daddy hand them everything. And so if daddy's not going to hand you everything, then, because I see a lot of that, if daddy's not going to hand you everything, then you really just have to be that good. And it's not that hard to be that good. And I've said this, like, to some of my students, you know, it's not hard to be the best in the world. To be the best in the world, all you have to do is just work really hard for a long time, because 99% of people aren't willing to work really hard for a long time.
I completely agree.
Not that I'm the best in the world.
I really appreciate it. Did you have a good time, man?
I did. Thank you for having me, dude.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the DAW. We really hope you enjoyed it. Did you enjoy the questions that we asked, or would you have liked to hear different ones? If you're listening to this on iTunes or any other podcast-related app, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. And if you're listening to this on SoundCloud, make sure to like, comment, and follow, and we'll see you next time on Behind the DAW.